The Washington Wizards won the NBA draft lottery, and the league might be the big winner. I've got Will Gottlieb, our all-city NBA draft expert, who's live in a hallway right now, right next to all of the top picks at the lottery. We're going to break down the winners and losers on today's All-NBA show. What is up? And happy Mother's Day, everybody. Welcome to the All-NBA show powered by FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet at FanDuel.com/AllCity. I'm your host, Adam Mares. I'm joined by my esteemed colleague from CHGO Bulls and All City's NBA draft expert, who is having a great day, I have to imagine. And he is right now, as I said, live from the lottery. You've got lots of high-profile prospects literally surrounding you at the moment. Will Gottlieb, how you doing today?
Yeah, I'm going to keep looking up because Cam Boozer and AJ DeBanza just walked into the elevator about 10, 15 feet to my left. We've also got some guys breaking down the set here, so I might get kicked out, but we're going to make it work. I'd love to say I'm in a nondescript hallway somewhere, but I am in the Navy Pier Convention Center where some chaos just happened in the lottery. And Adam, I'm excited to talk about it with you.
Man, I'm excited as well, man. And just so everybody knows, right here on this channel, Will Gottlieb, who's been covering the draft for a lot of years, been going to the combine, the lottery, all this different stuff. He is putting together these 5-minute scouting reports on the lottery prospects that will be dropping starting tomorrow with AJ DeBanza. They're really good. 5 minutes. You know, a lot of people want 5 minutes to kind of get to know the different prospects for their own research. Will Gottlieb is the guy you're going to want to follow. So you can check him out and then stay locked to this channel because we're going to be dropping those here for the next several weeks. But Will, let's get to it, man. The lottery, I just want to do it this way. I want to talk about winners and losers because I actually think every year there's winners and losers to the lottery, but it's like there's two winners, two losers, whatever. Keep it moving. Not the case this year. No. There are a lot of winners and a lot of losers. We're going to use my list. Here we go. Number one winner of the lottery, the NBA. The league. I think the league is number one. This could have been an Oklahoma City top pick or top 4 pick. It could have been a San Antonio top pick. I think in either of those cases, it would have been a disaster for the league because, quite frankly, those two teams do not need any help. And the odds were kind of frightening that they could have won. So I actually think the way it went, there's going to be people happy or unhappy, but the league at large has to be happy that the two juggernauts in the West right now did not get meaningfully better.
Yeah, they're restoring balance to the force over here. And, you know, I think there's a lot of discourse about like getting the teams who need it the most to get them the talent that they need in the draft. And I do kind of feel like it worked out that way. Like, I'm sure we'll talk about Indiana in the next section here, not to spoil too much. Everybody knows what happened with them. But like these gap year teams, I just like, do they really need more talent? They've got they just traded for Zubac. They have Siakam. They have Halliburton. I'm not really sure how much talent they need. It was an interesting trade, but I do think that the teams that really needed it the most won and got into the top 4. And yeah, for everybody to not have to worry about DeBanza on the Thunder for the Spurs, I think we're all feeling a little bit of relief there. And also just for conference balance, right? Like there's so much top talent. Cooper Flag going last year, Wemby, even like some of these other guys, Amen Thompson going to the Rockets, like over the last couple of years, it just feels like a lot of the top talent has ended up in the West. And so they'll balance that out a little bit here too.
A little bit. I mean, it's still 2-2. We get 2 teams in the top 4 going west, but to your point, I do feel like we've had a lot of years where it's been like the top 3 players are all going west. So the league is number one. I honestly was sweating it out. You watch how dominant those 2 teams are, and it's just it worked out this year that the talent will be spread out a little bit. And that brings us to the number 2 winner, which is obvious. I think most people would say number 1, but I'm telling you, I thought through this quite a bit. And I think that the Wizards winning it are somehow only the second biggest winners behind the league. But winners they are. They needed a big-time player. They got the number 1 pick. They had a lot of outs coming into this just because of some weird trades that have happened in the past. So they actually, I think, maybe had the best odds overall of anybody. But they got it, and they have some really good young talent. But I don't think they have any cornerstone young guys that I would be like our number 1. Now they get the opportunity to select their guy.
And I think the other thing with that is they made these big trades at the deadline to try to hurry up where they were headed, right? But they still didn't have that guy. And so were you going to bank on Trae Young to be this long-term piece that you're building your whole organization around? And obviously Alex Sarr is a really good player, and he showed a lot this year. Keyshawn George, a nice player. Trey Johnson, you draft 6 overall last year. Those are great pieces, but to go out and make moves, and it's not like they overpaid or even paid a lot to get Anthony Davis and Trae Young in the door, but they're still missing that A1 guy. And I think they can really find him number 1 overall. And it's just going to be fascinating to see if other teams start to replicate that with the new 3-2-1 lottery reform coming in. What happens with all of that? And so, like, this being the last year when you have this version of the lottery and the draft, I think is also just kind of a fascinating component in that. But yeah, the Wizards, I mean, and they've been doing this for years of trying to be, towards the top of the draft and get that guy, and they hadn't done it. They moved down. And so now they're going to get a guy and to pair him with Trey Johnson and Sarr and Keyshawn George, and then to have veterans like Trae Young and Anthony Davis to help support that, they become a really interesting team next year. I expect them to be in the play-in at least. So we'll see what it looks like, but they're an interesting team.
And I think, we'll talk about this here later on when we project. Later on in the show, we're going to project who we think is going in each spot. But I have to imagine Anthony Davis now becomes significantly available around the league. That trade, it was, to put them in a position to maybe be flexible. But now that you have the number 1 pick, it feels like you have the ability to go into the summer and say, hey, we got these 2 guys. This one right here, a lot of teams are probably going to covet, and we finally have our cornerstone to build around. So I think they're obviously big winners here. But the third biggest winner is the Clippers. In my opinion, and I was actually going through this with producer Atticus as we were leading up to this. First of all, we'll just talk about the pick. They needed to thread a needle here, basically, to not get the top 4 pick. Otherwise, it goes to Indiana. It needed to fall. It fell perfectly right to number 5. So they're going to be able to select a player in this year's draft, a pretty good player. And on top of that, they didn't have the worst case scenario, which is just that they lose their pick. I'm actually looking at their books now. It's like they had the worst setup of anybody 6 months ago, where you're just like, they are stuck with this team. Nobody really believes in it. And I'm looking at it now. Kawhi Leonard has an expiring $50 million contract heading into the summer. Darius Garland, 2 years, whatever. You can get off of Derek Jones Jr., very tradable $10 million contract. And they have all these contracts all these team options you can decline this year. I think the Clippers somehow get out of this as big, major winners where they kind of have a future now.
Yeah, and even thinking about like their long term, right? Like they kind of get out of this situation where they had all their picks out going to OKC, and there was really no way that they could turn it around. You make these big trades at the deadline, getting younger, getting guys that just have a little bit more upside, and you kind of reset your timeline. As you're mentioning, their books get a little bit cleaner. And now you're kind of waiting around a little bit to see if the next Kawhi, next Paul George duo wants to come to LA. But now you've got some real pieces to put around them. And I think that's another just fascinating result of all this. And what a weird trade to protect it 1 through 4. But yeah, I mean, it really worked out for them. And now all of a sudden they have accelerated this rebuild, almost not even really needing to do it, which is just an interesting way for this to work out. And again, another example of the lottery being this thing that's supposed to help distribute talent to the teams that need it the most, not really doing that. And the Clippers become the beneficiary.
Kawhi Leonard, let's just walk through this. Kawhi Leonard, $50 million next year. It's the last year of the deal. There's no options or anything. It's the last year of that deal. Darius Garland has 2 more years at $43 million, basically. So they're stuck with him. But he's a young guy. Maybe they want to keep him for a while. I don't really consider it stuck with Darius Garland, but that is one guy who has a couple years left. John Collins comes off the books. Bogdanovich can come off the books with a $16 million team option. They'll probably decline. Derek Jones Jr., $10 million, super tradable. Every team needs Derek Jones Jr., especially on an expiring for that price. You have you still have Mathurin that you're going to have to make a decision on. You have Brook Lopez coming off the books, $9 million team option. You have Batum coming off the books. Chris Dunn can come off the books if you want. Bradley Beal, $5 million next year. They honestly somehow have a super clean cap sheet. It's insane that the Clippers have been able to land this, and that pick just does so much for them. It is number 5, and it is a bit of a 4-player draft. Wouldn't you say it's a bit of a 4-player draft, or do you think that the 5th guy
is? No, it is, but 5 through 10, there's not a Cooper Flag or a Wembanyama at the top of this draft. Debanza could end up being like that. Peterson could end up being like that, but it's not the clear cut, this is the number 1 guy who's going to step in and be an all NBA caliber guy. But I do think that 5 through 10 or 5 through 9 is really strong in this draft, probably stronger than most drafts. So in that way, they get a guy that, they can put him next to Darius Garland. Like you mentioned, they could do something with Mathurin to try to retain him. And all of a sudden you've got this younger core. I guess my big question is is this time to trade Kawhi before he gets hurt again, before he loses value? And so could you get another pick to kind of stack on top of that? And now you've got something cooking. And like I said, you'll see if a free agent wants to come, but the books being so open, having young talent in there, they've got a good setup. And it's pretty impressive how quickly they've turned that around. I mean, I think they have not been one of these front offices that has gotten a lot of credit around the league and in just like the general narrative about how things are going. I think they did a really nice job, and it turned out like it had to hit in order for that to work. But it did. And that's kind of all that matters.
I mean, to your point, Kawhi Leonard, absolutely. Who would not take for one first? There's teams that feel like they're one Kawhi Leonard away. And there's even a couple teams I can think of. Maybe we'll get into it later.
The Nuggets?
Well, maybe. I mean, there's a lot of desperate teams right now. This is kind of the new CBA, is that the window is closing on teams really fast. Like there's teams that thought like, okay, 2-3 years, we'll see what happens. Then all of a sudden it's like, wait a second, we might be pretty far. We might be before you thought you were maybe a John Collins away or you're a Derek Jones Jr. away. Now you might be a Kawhi Leonard away. And so then, yes, he's very tradable. And then Derek Jones Jr., I think, can bring you something because he is a guy that fits on a lot of different teams. You have guys like Batum and Chris Dunn that they can get, creative
sign
with.
and trade possibilities too.
Sign and trades. Like they have a lot of guys that they can replenish their war chest. So the Clippers, and a lot of people thought coming into this year, conspiracy, they're just going to get they're going to be in jail by the end of this. They're not going to get anything. They broke
what
really
if
nicely.
The NBA finds them the 5th overall pick as part of the aspiration scandal? Like that would be a crazy turn. This thing is just like going all over the place.
I don't see that happening, man.
I don't either.
I don't think it's happening.
That'd be too heavy.
Somehow, this is one of the greatest days in your time covering the Bulls, and it's been a while, like a decade of covering the Chicago Bulls. It's one of the best days, and yet you fall all the way to 4th on my own personal list of winners. Still a huge winner, though, but the Bulls have to feel like major winners.
It's the draft lottery form of mediocrity is being 4th on the winners and losers list for Adam Mares. No, I mean, this is huge for the Bulls, and they really have been one of the few teams that has operated in this way. That's like, we're going to be ethical. We're not going to tank. And like, that's great. It doesn't really benefit you in the way that the NBA's incentive structure works. And that's of course changing. And so maybe they do gain some from that, but to move up in this draft, especially the way that they cleared out at the trade deadline, just getting rid of a bunch of guys. And I know there's been a lot of criticism about not getting enough back. And I think that's true. Would have been hard to do that if you wait until they've got 2 months left on their deals. So they needed to act sooner. They didn't do it, but now they're in a situation where they don't really have to worry about re-signing any of their guys. They don't have to have any stressful negotiations. And they can really move forward here with Bryson Graham at the helm. You get the number 4 pick, you got the 15th pick, 38 is going to be a good one in the second round, and then 56. But they can really turn this thing around, and it will be very fascinating to see how Bryson Graham sort of starts to build this thing in his image. Because even a lot of the way that I think about, okay, what are some things that they could do in the offseason? How could they start to build this roster? A lot of it is through the lens of what did Arturas Karnisovas want, and how would he have built the team? And obviously that's no longer the case. And so it'll just be kind of interesting to see how Bryson Graham, what his vision is for how they want to build this out. And to our point here, as we're talking about like the strength of the top of this draft, there's not really a guy who I think is like the clear-cut number one. I probably lean Debanza at this point, especially with the Wizards jumping up. I think he's a good fit there. But they're going to get a real player at 4, and that's just, they don't have that. Like Modest is a really nice player. I'm excited about him. Giddey, I think, gained some value in the 3-2-1 lottery reform era, just because you don't want to be the worst team in the league. But they really now have an opportunity to like get a top guy. And if it's Caleb Wilson, if it's Darren Peterson falling, or Boozer, whatever, it's like, maybe they're not the number one guy that you built everything around, but it's just going to be so much harder to control the talent coming into your team now. And so to get this on like the last leg of this older lottery system, I think it's such a nice stroke of luck for them.
It's huge. And to your point, man, you've been covering this team for a long time where they have just been in mediocrity. They weren't going to win the lottery because they weren't bad enough, but you knew they weren't, like, there was no long-term story to tell. I do feel like today signifies for Bulls fans chapter 1 of what will feel like at least a multi-year arc. And I think that's the thing when I watch you guys on CHGO Bulls, but also when I just think about the Bulls, it's like, what can you rally behind? What's the story that I can like try to dive into? I just feel like you got a new GM. You've kind of got new momentum, new motion in the organization a little bit. You're moving in a different direction, and you just got blessed with the number 4 pick. So I have to imagine that's how it feels. The beginning chapter of something worth telling.
And you don't have to like now read through the whole prologue, right? Like there's not going to be a year or two where they're trying to figure out how do we, manipulate the draft to where we can get a talent in the door. It's like, you can actually start here. And that's the big thing, is like they kind of went through this long waiting period. And as a critic of the way that they had been building things, it was like, this was always going to have to happen. You were always going to have to take your medicine and start over in some capacity, but you're just giving yourself fewer and fewer outs the longer you wait. Now, obviously, it took some luck, and obviously, jumping from 9 is you can't plan for that. But it really does set them up in a situation where you can at least like think about it as if you are starting from here and not you're starting in 2 years. And with the new lottery reform, I know I keep going back to this, it's going to change everything. Like I think this is going to be one of the biggest shifts because it's not just like who has the best odds to jump. It's going to change how teams behave and how they build their roster. And there's going to be way more competition to be where the Bulls have lived the last couple of years in the mid-30s range of wins. And that was going to be really hard to get back to with all this talent being stripped away from the roster. So this really just, it helps them, and it's lucky, but that's what this is. It's luck. And I think that overall it's like a healthier outcome for the league, the way that they're going to do it now, where it's like, you can't just be like encouraging this strategy that benefits teams for losing. Like, put aside tanking and like the ridiculousness of the last couple of weeks of the season, that's just not a good product. So I'm happy about it. I know it's kind of a controversial take, but I think it's going to be good for the health of the league. And obviously the Bulls, like I said, getting this lucky on the way out of that is just a huge, huge boon for them.
Well, one thing is that the lottery is fun. I mean, whether you hate it or like it, like the idea that the Thunder could have won this one was like so nerve-wracking. And then, so all the teams, that it almost provides this intrigue. And I think that intrigue will still be there for the lottery because these teams may be less incentivized to tank, but still.
Well, even more so because of now you can jump from 16 to 11 or to 9 or something. Like drawing for every pick is just going to be, it's another layer of just how crazy this thing is going to be.
Why they did this on Mother's Day right before games is like so beyond me. This totally should have been its own day. There should have been no playoff games. Let's just make it, because this is such an interesting
like try
thing.
To squeeze it in on a Thursday right before the first game. It's like 5:00 or something. And I never thought that was great, but yeah, Sunday afternoon is a little. They're gonna have to work on that.
Maybe after one Sunday matinee game, and then we'll do it right after that or something. I don't know. Who knows? I have 2 more winners here for you though. It's tough to call the Jazz winners because I think they probably would have loved the number 1 pick. There was a good storyline there. If they get to Bansa, BYU stays in Utah. There was a good storyline there. But 2 is not that bad. And like if you just look at the options they have a lot of young talent. They were the fakest bad team, in my opinion, in the NBA this year. If you want to talk about tanking, that was the one that pulled it off. And they only fall to 2. They have. I just like when you look at their sheet and you look at the young players that they have. I don't know if Ace Bailey is a guy that I consider to be like your cornerstone guy. In fact, I'm kind of against it. I think George is really good player. But now you get a chance to add another one, and I'm just like, they have a lot of young talent. They have 1 million picks. They have tradable contracts that people want. I look at them and think that the fakest tanking team, the fakest bad team is going to be able to flip the switch now, in my opinion, and either go to full young guys that could have a lot of upside in the years to come, or maybe even pivot off of one of the young guys and try to build a roster that's like a top 7 or 8 roster as early as next year. So I think they're still winners, even though they fell.
Absolutely. I mean, number 1 is just the amount of talent that they have going into next season. You bring in Jaren Jackson, he doesn't play. Lauri Markkanen has been basically on ice for the last couple of years. Walker Kessler coming back. We'll see what they do with him. And I'm actually curious to get your take about if that's a longer term fit for you, or do you think like the 3 big thing might not work? But yeah, to be able to get either Darren Peterson or Debansa or Boozer to add to this, it just gives them more possibilities. And in the West, where all these teams are just so studded, like they're going to have real talent now. And again, it's another reason why I just don't think that this older lottery system was benefiting the worst teams in the league, because you were able to manipulate it in such a way where the Jazz, to your point, are not one of the worst teams in the league. They've got a ton of talent. But now this gives them even more optionality. I wonder, like Keontae George was awesome this year. How much do you feel comfortable paying him as a restricted free agent or on his rookie scale extension? Would you feel more comfortable trying to move on from him now and you could replace him with Darren Peterson? I don't know. Like, I think Keontae's great and they probably do want to build around him, but it's just the options that they have and the talent that they'll have in the door. But if they do keep Kessler, Markkanen, Jaren Jackson Jr., Ace Bailey, and it's, Caleb Wilson or one of these guys, they're just going to be huge. And that is, I mean, I think that's coming back in the NBA. I think like big, not just like 6'6", 6'8" across the wing, but I think it's going to be like you got to have multiple 7-foot guys. You got to have real size, real length, and they've got that now.
I'd be curious to see. I want to see what team building looks like in the years to come because, to your point, I feel less hopeful. I mean, even though we're talking about OKC being able to keep this window open for 7 or 8 years, they're an anomaly. And maybe you could say the same of San Antonio. But I think most teams are looking around going, can we really try to plan for these, like just build it slow, keep it open for 10 years, and then wax and wane? I just don't know. And I want to look at a team like Utah that might be the best example of this, of they have enough assets that they could actually just get crazy next year and open up their window for 2 years, go after a really big hitter that they don't think will be long-term, and just say, what if we opened our window as wide as possible for 2 years because we have the number 2 pick, we have George, we have Bailey, we have other players that I like personally, like Sensabob and Kale. So, like, could they go into this summer and say, like, we have the best and all these picks in the future. We have all these picks. We can just build a juggernaut for 2 years. And that's how the NBA is anyway. Who wants to plan 7 years in the most unpredictable league? Why not just open it up? I don't think they will, but I at least look at it and say, why not? Could you make a crazy deal?
Well, I think what's interesting is that a lot of teams are responding to the Thunder and the Spurs. And at least the way that you hear people talk about it, it's like teams are afraid to go all in right now because it's like they're the benchmark. Are you going to be able to compete with them? And my guess is that would be the thing that stops them. Like you kind of wait until the moment where, you know, if you do make one of these moves, and maybe it's Giannis or, like Kawhi would be an interesting case study in Utah. But I do think that will make some teams hesitant, especially now with the uncertainty around like getting yourselves back into a situation where you can pivot out of it quickly, right? Because that's really what the draft was, is like, okay, you have this like gap year situation. Halliburton tears his Achilles. It's tragic. It sucks. But you know they weren't going there. But now it's like they were putting themselves in a position where they could quickly get back to the NBA Finals in 1 year if they had hit on this lottery. And unfortunately for them, it didn't work out that way. But I do wonder if that's going to kind of go by the wayside just without. There's no reason to like be the worst team in the league. Can you kind of change your behavior along with that? And the Jazz are they just have so much talent. It's going to be, and it doesn't feel like it fits super well either because Ace is like not really two. I don't know what they do with this number 2 pick, but just with these multiple bigs, very, very interesting.
I mean, how many teams could put together a better package for Giannis? And this sounds crazy, and it's admittedly crazy. Giannis does not want to go to Utah. He's not going to sign extensions there. But if you were just like, hey, man, we want a 2-year window, and you've got 2 years on your deal, could anybody put together a better package there and still retain some value? So it's interesting. I don't think they'll do it. No team has ever done it. But you know what? Every time there's a new CBA, the team that's willing to say, here's the way to think about it going forward, they always win. And the way to think about it might just be 2-year windows, and then we're going to be bad for 2 years. Then we're going to be great for 2 years, and we're going to be bad for 2 years. That's just the way to do it if you're not OKC. The last winner I have here, and by the way, I see some people saying there's some background noise. That background noise is AJ Debanza, Carlos Boozer.
Sorry about that, guys. Yeah, I can show you real quick. There's like people in the hallways here moving stuff around, breaking down the set. So apologies for the background noise, but we are here at the lottery, so I figured it was worth calling in.
Absolutely is, man. The last winner I have for you is the Memphis Grizzlies. And it's not like, they moved up 3 spots to go here. They could get a phenomenal pick. They've drafted really well. They have some like young players that have been pretty interesting, but they have some life now after what's been pretty tumultuous. I mean, the end of the end of the Grizzlies really was the "we're good in the West" comment from John Morant, where at that time they had all these young players and promise. It's been all downhill since then. This is a shot of life to them.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. And they have some nice young pieces that they can still build with. Like, Zach Edey was amazing this year when he played. I know it was a short sample, but, like, he looked dominant. Cedric Howard looked great. And Zach Kleinman has done an incredible job of just finding gems in the rough, being able to draft in the mid-teens. And so if you have your cornerstones in place, and they'll get a guy here with the 3rd pick, you've got those 3 together, and now you can really start to put together a group that works around them. And it's just so tough in the West. Like, it really is. I know they were fine on the West, but they weren't. And so this kind of helps set them up and on a timeline that I think makes some more sense. But credit to Kleiman too for kind of getting off of Bane and Jaren Jackson a little bit sooner than maybe anticipated. And it didn't work out with John Morant. Obviously, we'll see what happens with him, but they've got a ton of future picks. They've got a ton of flexibility. They've got real talent in the door. This is another young team that is like under the radar, putting together a really good situation. They've got to hit They've got to get the guys together that actually make it work. But they've set themselves up in a really, really nice way.
I also think number 3 is a good spot to be in, man. Like, there are some really interesting players. There's one guy I'm a little lower on than everybody else, but and we'll talk about that here coming up in a second. But it's just, they're in a good spot, man, to be able to make almost a pressure-free pick, because the teams at the top have to make the big decision, especially number 2. You have to make the big decision, and they kind of have a little bit of an easier one. So I think they're in a great spot. Well, let's take a break, though, real quick, because on the other side, I wanted to do winners and losers before the break, but we're going to take a break now. There are fewer losers, in my opinion, of this break in this lottery, but there are 3 of them. And then later in the show, I'm going to ask Will who he thinks is going to be drafted at each of the spots. We'll do that on the other side. Happy Mother's Day to everybody, and to all the sons out there that maybe procrastinated a little too hard. This is your last chance to get in on this Mother's Day special for the perfect gift. It's Aura Frames. I've been telling you about it for a couple weeks now. Aura Frames is a beautiful picture frame that you can hang up on the wall, lay on a dresser, whatever it is, and it's a digital photo frame, so it actually could be any photo that you want. They offer free unlimited storage, so you can add as many photos and videos as you want. You can pre-upload them before it ships. You just blame it on the postal service. Say, hey, I ordered this, it didn't come in time. I'm sorry, Mom, I'm a little bit late. But you can upload it in a custom gift box with no price tag and already have the photos in it. So when she opens it up, it's already got the photo or video that you want. And you can personalize the gift message. You can also share photos and videos effortlessly. If you download the Aura app, you can just text photos straight to your phone. It's got the top rated app on the App Store on Christmas Day 2025. Might be the same case today on Mother's Day. So make Mother's Day special with Aura Frames. It was named #1 by Wirecutter. You can save on the gifts mom loves by visiting auraframes.com. For a limited time, listeners can get $25 off their best-selling Carver mat frame with code ALLNBA, all one word, ALLNBA. You get $25 off. That's auraframes.com, promo code ALLNBA, and support the show by mentioning us at checkout. Terms and conditions apply. You can also check out Shopify. What kind of dreams did you have when you were a kid? What did you want to be when you grew up? How about now? Are you thinking about your own business or side hustle? Well, you got to get familiar with Shopify, because Shopify is the e-commerce platform behind millions of businesses around the world and 10% of all e-commerce in the U.S. Shopify even powers the All City merch store, where you can buy CHGO Bulls gear. Maybe you're a Bulls fan. We have some awesome Bulls gear. Bulls have some of the best merch to draw inspiration from. And so you could check out some of the CHGO stuff that we have on the All City merch store. And of course, you'll be using Shopify if you're checking out. Shopify's got you covered with website creation, product descriptions, email and social media marketing, and more. They also have AI tools designed to help you maximize sales. So if you're ready to sell, you're ready for Shopify. Turn your big business idea into with Shopify on your side. Sign up for the $1 per month trial and start selling today at shopify.com/allcity. That's shopify.com/allcity. Back here, segment 2 of the All NBA show. We're going to have Jason Timpf and Tim Legler the rest of the way through this week, but we got Will Gottlieb today, and you're going to want to follow Will Gottlieb because he is dropping draft profile videos every day, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday this week, and then 3 or 4 times a week after that. So you're going to get familiar with all of the draft, the players, the prospects in this year's draft. 5 minutes to learn the strengths and weaknesses. It's a really cool series that we have coming. Will Gottlieb crushed these. All right, let's go to the biggest losers, Will. Number 1 is obvious. It's the Pacers. They effectively ended up trading 4 Zubats. They could have gotten the pick if it was top 4. Instead, they don't. So this feels like a pretty big L on their part.
It does. I still think it was kind of a worthwhile trade for them. Zubats is going to be awesome with Halliburton and with Siakam. Obviously, you'd love to be able to add another high-level player to that. But I think they're going to be okay. And it goes back to this, frustration I have with the gap year teams. And obviously, it was tragic to see Halliburton get hurt. But this is just not a team that is in need of talent. And so I'm not happy that they lost out on it. But I'm glad that the NBA is addressing that system in that way. But as far as the Pacers go, obviously it hurts them. They get out of, I can't remember the exact obligation from that trade, but I think it was going to be 2 in 2031 or 2032 or something like that. So they get that one back. And I wouldn't be surprised if they try to put some of those future picks on the table to try to go get another player now, because they're obviously in that window. We'll see how Halliburton looks when he's healthy and when he comes back. I don't view this as quite so devastating, because it just would have been such an unlikely home run had they kept the pick, because of how good Zubats is and how well I think he fits there. But certainly, it was a 50-50 proposition. They lose out on that pick, and it's going to cost them. They're they're really like the other huge piece of this is just like the rookie scale contract. To be able to get a really high level contributor making, less than 15 million, less than 10 million, that sets you up for the next 4 years. And when you have 2 max players on your books, that can really just open up a ton of possibilities.
People are talking about how they don't like these types of trades when you put, when it comes down to luck. I want every trade to be like this. I want every trade that happens to be like, we don't know if it's good or bad. It all comes down to the ping pong balls. It doesn't matter what it is. Every trade, I think it makes it so much more fun. But man, that war room must have been a mess watching their name get called there and get the 5th one that goes to the Clippers. The Nets, big losers here. I mean, they had a tanky year. It was not fun. They fall 3 spots. They're just clearly big losers here, especially when we talk about the draft being, even if you think it's good in that middle part, it's still, there were names, and they need a name. They need a cornerstone guy. I don't know if they're going to get that with where they fell all the way down to 6.
Especially them, like, kind of similar to what we talked about with the Bulls, where it's like they needed a guy to set the foundation so that they could move forward next year when they don't have their pick. And really to go through the challenges of this season and to not come away with, one of the true cornerstone guys. I do agree with you that they'll get a really good player. But just such a weird draft last year, right? Where they draft like 5 ball handlers at multiple different positions. And now they're going to be in this range of the draft where it's like a lot of smaller guards. And so do you even want to, are they going to not have to reach? Do they trade back? Did they find a way to supplement Michael Porter Jr. and Nick Claxton a different way? Or did they change their behavior entirely because of this new lottery reform? So this is really tough. Like, I feel like them and the Wizards were the 2 teams that really just like in terms of their process over the last couple of years, this was like, they really needed that and they needed to get it now before things changed. And so tough luck for them. I do think they'll get a good player, but certainly not to the level of, a Devontae Peterson, Boozer Wilson.
It hurts because they don't, like you said, no pick the next year. But one thing I am thinking about, and this is true of the Bulls too, the new rules have this, you can't get top 5 picks 3 times in a row, right? So they're 6. Clock hasn't started. There is a chance that they could just win it. And with the Bulls, same thing. Like the clock, if they do decide to go young, next year would be the last year they can kind of hope for that to happen. So maybe that's a weird silver lining, but I don't think with the Bulls, with the Nets' situation, I don't think they can really hope for that since they don't have the pick next year. And then the last one here, Sacramento, man. What a tough year for them. 22-60, only a 45% chance of moving up. So it's still the odds were a little slightly against them. But you want to talk about a team that just doesn't seem to have a lot of hope right now, and I don't know how much is going to change this year. Definitely them.
Well, and Atticus maybe can check this for me. Didn't they win a bunch of games down the stretch and that pushed them down because they just like weren't really in control of their destiny the way that most of these teams were? And so that kind of pushed them into lower odds, and it's not like it would have necessarily gotten them to move up from where they are, but just, I mean, it would suck to be a Kings fan now. It really would. There's no way to sugarcoat that. I'm sorry. But yeah, I mean, this would have been a good chance. I do like some of their young players that they have, but they need a guy. And like, one of these to pair along with Keegan Murray, and Maxime Reynaud had a really nice stretch. He's not very good defensively, but like he's an interesting scorer. And then maybe you can get something for Sabonis and start to reset things a little bit with the foundation, and just much harder to do that. But there was the rumor that they were really into Acuff. I think he could still be in that range. So maybe they end up getting their guy anyway.
Acuff's interesting because you're watching these playoffs right now, and if you have guards that can't defend, it's like they better be unbelievable on offense. And he's obviously very good, but I'm just watching these playoffs and going, guards that can't guard are just such a liability right now because there's so many teams with ball handling, so many teams with athletes. And Acuff is an athlete. He's really good, but as I'm watching these games in the playoffs, I keep thinking about the prospect through that lens of how would they look, the best version of them, how would they look? And I just watch Acuff and I'm like, you got to cover for him in a lot of different ways. So I don't know. I feel like his stock might fall a little bit watching the playoffs.
And that's kind of how I feel about this range of the draft, right? Because you have Wagler, you have Burries, who's more of a 2, but still kind of like a 6'4"-ish guard. You have Acuff, you have Flemings. I'm forgetting one off the top of my head, another guard in that zone. I just don't know that there's going to be 4 or 5 guards off the board in a row in the top 10. Like, I think there are going to be some guys that jump up, whether it's an Ademara or, Yaxel Lindenberg, Morris Johnson, some of these guys like that you're seeing a lot in mocks in the like mid to late teens. I just think that they play a more valuable position. They play a position that teams really value, especially this time of year. And it's always funny because this lottery happens right when like the playoffs are really heating up and you're starting to see what matters. But then the teams that are at the top of this draft, save for like the, OKC and those types of teams, they're not really the ones that are involved in this. So, it's like you're swinging on talent, you're trying to get upside, you're willing to sacrifice a little bit of floor to try to go for that ceiling, but it doesn't always work out that way. And that's kind of how some of these teams get trapped down here. But all that to be said, I agree with you that just like, I'm just not interested in a smaller guard. I'm just not. And I think maybe that comes back around, but I just feel like the NBA is growing. It's getting bigger. And you really have to be able to defend multiple positions and especially guard down. We're seeing a lot of big wings out there, and there's a lot of guys that just can't defend down positions. And so when you put that responsibility on a super ball dominant guard like Acuff, it just becomes an impossible ask to ask him to try to do both.
That being said, getting into the paint is also at a premium, so maybe that cancels it out to some degree. We'll see. Before we go, we're going to run through the who you think is going to get picked here. But before we do that, I'm watching this lottery on TV, and I don't know if I just don't remember this, but have the players always been at the lottery before? And was it weird because we're seeing the lottery go, and then we're seeing the podium, the conversation, and like, can everybody just hear as they're talking about Caleb Wilson and Boozer and strengths and weaknesses? Was it awkward at all to have the players watching all of this take place?
It's actually a hilarious thing because sometimes they'll like flash to a player when a team jumps up and they're like, oh, I did not think about having to go to this city. So it is always a little bit awkward. They have always been there, at least in the last 5 or so years that I've been here. And like Malika went up to, interview AJ and Darren and Cam before the lottery started. So it's like they're trying to make it an event, right? Like they want this to be for TV. The way it works in the drawing room is that they only pick for the top 4 and they do it in order. So this is all made for TV. And they try to add that to just build the suspense and the feeling. And it is kind of funny just to see guys start to realize, okay, this is maybe where I'm headed. This is where I'm going to live for the next, 7-8 years.
Yeah. All right, let's get into it then. Where are these guys going to live for the next 7 or 8 years? So Washington gets the number 1 pick. There's a lot of motion, obviously, as Debanza being the number 1. Even though all the guys seem good, he, in weird way, seems like the safest, like high floor as well as a high upside. Is it a lock that he's just going to go to Washington?
I definitely don't think so. I would pick him there right now, and I'm sorry again about the banging in the background. I guess it makes you wonder how they view these 2 guys that they traded for at the deadline. Are they going to really feel like they're going to be long-term partners with Trae Young and Anthony Davis? Or do you feel like, okay, Cameron Boozer could be a fantastic pair with Alex Sarr, and we actually want to try to move AD now and just build around that front court? They have Keyshawn George, who's a great wing. They have Trey Johnson, who they want to invest in. They have a point guard. Like maybe that could be a direction to go. I still think they swing for the upside of Debanza because that player with that skill set at that position with that size is just too valuable, I think, to say no to. But I definitely do not think this is written in stone.
It's an interesting. I feel like it is just because there's so much momentum, and sometimes this happens. It kind of happened with Lonzo Ball, if you recall, back in the day, where it was like he's clearly the number 2 pick, and the Lakers got it. They have to take him, and it just felt almost like they had to. Like there was no going back and forth. Debanza has some of that. He's a great player, but I am curious to see if they get a little bit weird here. I also just think that Anthony Davis is the most available player in the NBA right now.
I also wonder if like any of these teams in the top 4 could trade down because the top 4 is so much of a consensus of like what the talent is. Maybe like the Bulls or the Grizzlies really fall in love with Debanza number 1 and they want to move up to try to go get him. And if you're the Wizards and you feel like any of these guys would be a great addition to our core, let's pick up another asset, move down and still get one of these guys that we might want number 1 anyway. I could definitely see some action. Typically you're not seeing teams jump from like 10 to 1 or something, but I think within this top 4, just given the tier that it is, that could be really interesting.
That's what we saw with the Celtics that year, moving down and getting the guy they wanted in Tatum. So that would be wild if we saw that again. It feels so risky. And of course, the last time we saw it, it did not work out very well for Philadelphia, the team that traded up. So we'll see what happens. Number 2 then. So you say you've thrown this whole board off because you've said you don't know that Debanza can be penciled in. What about Utah? What do you think their hope is here? Assuming picking number 2, but like, what do you think they're reaching for?
I would probably go Darren Peterson here. If Debanza is off the board, which I'm, not necessarily expecting, but I would guess that at this point. Number 1, they really need that kind of a size at that position, right? They have Keontae, they have Lowry, who's probably going to slide down to the 3 to play alongside Jaren Jackson Jr. and then Walker Kessler. I think it's a really interesting front court. I like that size. And then when you have the floor spacing and face-up ability with Jaren and with Lowry at the 3-4, that just makes for some really intriguing, things that Will Hardy can do with that offense. And so having another floor spacer like Darren Peterson to come in, and he can kind of grow slowly. They're not going to have to overburden him. They're not going to have to put the ball in his hands too much because you also have Keontae George. But Peterson at 6'4", 6'5", he's a good defender. He's an elite shooter, and he showed a lot in terms of creation when he was in high school. Obviously the cramps and there's a story about the creatine situation over the weekend that came out. I just think that people are going to look at his tape from high school and feel like we can get him back closer to this. And if that happens, I mean, he was consensus number 1 basically through the first half of the college season. So
he's unbelievable.
He's unbelievable. I think he'd be a really good fit next to Keontae too, where they can share that offensive load. But then also the ability to sort of scale down and play next to other guys. Like that's a really high powered offense.
He is tied for my favorite player in the draft. So to me, it's like a good spot to be in. But number 3 then gets interesting, and I guess it gets interesting for you. If you're Memphis, where are you going? Let's say those 2 guys are gone. Peterson to Bansa, 1, 2.
Yeah, this is maybe where I go a little bit off script and probably say Wilson. I think Zach, I don't know how much you're really building around Zach Edey. So maybe this you can throw out the door. But Boozer and Edey is a little, sticky to me. They both kind of operate in the same spots. They both have the same deficiencies. I could absolutely see Caleb Wilson just having an incredible combine. He measures taller and longer than you think. He's got a bigger vertical than you think. He interviews really well, and the Grizzlies just kind of fallen in love with his upside and the fit next to some of their guys. I'm not sure I would be drafting for fit in that spot if I'm Memphis, just because they don't really have an A1 guy. And I don't think that Caleb Wilson has the same A1 potential that the other 3 in this top 4 have. So maybe they get turned off by that, but I think he's a better fit. I think he's just an incredibly dynamic, explosive athlete. That defensive front court with him and Edey would just be, and Cedric Howard would be amazing. So I could see him going higher. Like I feel like he's been kind of penciled in at number 4 with the top 3 being Boozer, Devanza, Peterson. I could see Caleb Wilson breaking into that.
I kind of like him number 1. I kind of like him as my guy. And I know we maybe have less tape on him, but when you watch him, you're like, yeah, that guy seems, the floor seems high, assuming health, just because he does a lot of the things defensively that you need a guy to do. His athleticism is crazy. Seems like one of the guys you do want to invest in just in terms of really hard worker, a guy that I think a lot of teams can talk themselves into. We're going to get close to the ceiling on this guy. Sometimes you don't know which way it's going to break. He seems like a ceiling reacher. So I like him, but you are right that it is weird the fit there since they already have this guy in Edey. But that leaves Boozer for the Bulls. And I think Boozer, you could talk yourself into Utah. There's a connection. There's one in Chicago as well.
Yep.
Is Boozer to you, is he as exciting for what you're hoping for when you moved up in this lottery? It's like, all right, we're going to have Boozer. Is that exciting?
It's exciting to me. I think a lot of people have been just with the talent and like the electricity of the top, 3 or 4 guys in this draft. And the upside with a Wilson, I think people have gotten a little bit just disappointed is maybe strong. I just think that the lack of explosive superstar potential with him is making him fall a little bit. Just in terms of people's interest. I don't think that necessarily means he's going to be any worse of a player or prospect. One of the most productive college players we've ever seen, just an absolute winner, great character guy, and just a very interesting skill set. He's definitely a little bit of a defensive fit concern, and the Bulls don't really have anybody in the front court that they need to worry about. But I kind of like him next to Buzelis. I feel like they can kind of complement each other. Modest brings some of that rim protection. Boozer can be a little bit more on the block. But the floor spacing, the passing, the facilitation, the post scoring, he's just going to be a very, very productive player. I don't know if he'll be the best player on a championship caliber team. Maybe he is. I wouldn't necessarily put it past him. But I think if he falls to 4, I could see him going number 1. I could see any of these guys going number 1. And I think he's just going to be a really, really good player. So if he does end up going to 4 to the Bulls, I think they'd be thrilled with that.
What do Bulls fans think of Carlos Boozer? Is there anything to this? You had the father, you get the son.
It's funny. I always feel like he was a little bit overlooked in Chicago. He was kind of the consolation prize in the year when Bosh and LeBron went to Miami, and everybody was talking about, D Wade and LeBron coming to join forces with Joakim Noah and Derrick Rose. And obviously that didn't happen. And so everybody kind of had these expectations. It's almost like Vucevic, where you like overpay to get him. And even though he's like a solid player for you, you just are frustrated with him because he wasn't the other guy that you actually wanted, or because you gave up too much to get him. So people, I think, were a little bit frustrated with Carlos Boozer for not being Chris Bosh, which is like totally unfair. But he definitely has kind of there's a segment of the fan base that appreciates him. There's a segment that is kind of like not too interested.
And lastly, fifth, the Clippers have this one. I mean, who knows? Talk about unpredictable. Who knows what they do with the pick? They keep it, they trade it, whatever else. You do have Darius Garland. So Acuff and Garland does not feel like a foundation to be backcourt. I always thought Acuff would fall anyway, but what are you projecting happens there if they were to keep it?
So I do think you're in this range now where, in the same way that the top four could really go in any order at this point, I think you're kind of in a similar spot with 5 through 8. And so you obviously have Acuff, you have Kingston Flemings from Houston, you have Keaton Wagler from Illinois. I kind of like that fit the best because he can play a little bit on the ball. He can play a little bit off the ball. Incredible shooter. I do think he's not quite ready to run an offense. Like his ball handling isn't quite there yet where you can just put the ball in his hands and let him be the guy. So play off of another high level scoring point guard who can really pass it too. I really like that fit. And he's got size. He's 6'6", 6'7". We'll see like what the measurements are and the weight and all that stuff. He's very skinny. At Illinois, played very, very slowly. And I think in part that was because of the ball handling concerns. So I wonder how much he can increase his speed at the next level. But if you're going to keep Kawhi, they were one of the slowest paced teams in the league. Could that actually be a really good fit there? If it had been a different team getting the 5th pick, I might have said a different answer, but I really like the Wagler fit in LA.
The Clippers got it. This is a sign from God. They have to move on from Kawhi. If they cannot draft a player getting this lucky in the lottery. They cannot draft a player to fit Kawhi Leonard.
This is their ticket out of this thing. They got to use it.
They have to use it, man. Will, real quickly before I let you out, just tell us about these videos, man. They drop tomorrow. We'll have some coming this week. Why should people tune in?
I think that's just like you said earlier, it's a really good way to just catch up on some of we're going through like strengths, weaknesses, the best fits, player comparisons. It's just like a quick way to get pretty in-depth familiarity with a lot of these prospects. And so the plan is to do about 15 of these. And, there's tons of great people doing awesome work and giving you like 15, 20, 40-minute breakdowns on guys. That's a lot to consume. So we wanted to keep it a little bit shorter. I think they're going to be fun. They're going to be informative. And they're going to keep you up to date on a really exciting draft class. So hopefully people tune in. Hopefully people like them. But I'm having a lot of fun with it.
That's right. You can cue that outro music, Atticus. It's a lot like me, man. Sometimes I just want an appetizer of scouting prospects. There's so many of them to get through. I'm covering the NBA. We got games going on right now. And it's nice to be like, all right, give me the overview. Let me know the strengths and weaknesses of these guys. And I've seen them, the first handful to come through. They absolutely look fantastic, so you're not going to want to miss it. We do have one super chat, though, before we get out of here. What are the people saying? JMK says, sorry for the lottery, or should the lottery be further adjusted to try to balance talent and parity between the East and West divisions? Great show. Thanks. Come on, man. Sometimes the number one pick is Zach Reese-Shea. There's no way to balance things properly. Like, you can only have the top 4, 2 go East, 2 go West.
The wheel is the only way.
I'm telling you, they're going to invent the wheel where it's like 30-year cycle before you come back to it. And it'll happen, and Denver will be the 30th team. So theirs will be 30 years out. And 20 years into it, they'll scrap it for another system. I just know that's how it'll work out. Will, on Mother's Day, doing the Lord's work, man. We appreciate it, and I can't wait for these videos to drop.
It's a lot of fun. Thanks for having me on, Adam.
You can leave the hallway now.
I can leave the hallway. I feel bad. I'm like keeping these people longer than they probably want to be here.
Everybody, thanks so much for tuning in. I'm back with Jason Timp tomorrow, breaking down all these games from the weekend. We'll see you then.
We all silly like the mayor.